cannot get out of, and what's happened with our national economy and the exportation of our manufacturing sector abroad and our signing on to all of these globalist trade treaties and our running up of a $13 trillion national debt. People can say what they want to. There has been a disproportionate Jewish influence and impact in facilitating the United States traveling in this disastrous direction. And I don't really know at this point what, if anything, can be done to reverse it. I mean, it is so pervasive in our culture now that even to be talking the way that we're talking on the air here is virtually a guarantee that you will never be given an outlet in any major corporate media, radio or television stations, in order to have an intelligent political discussion about this.
Absolutely. Now, some people are going to think that I jumped on this story because it was something that I could use, this is grasping at straws or whatever. But the thing that really struck me about this is that here you have these people who are willing to go to these ridiculous lengths in order to, quote unquote, stay within the limits of their law, because their law is that, when you're fasting on Yom Kippur, you're not supposed to take, I don't know what the intricacies of it are, but obviously if they're willing to jam something up their rear end in order to bypass this and still be able to say that they have maintained the letter of the law, this goes to show you why you have a group of people like this who are not moved to compassion or to moral outrage when thousands of people are butchered as took place during Operation Cast Lead. This is the reason you don't see them out in the streets protesting in large numbers over the fact that the United States is going bankrupt, fighting two of Israel's wars for her, one in Iraq and one in Afghanistan, and why we will not see them out in the streets in any kind of significant numbers when the next outrage takes place, whether it is against Iran or Syria or Lebanon or whatnot. These people have priorities that are completely reversed from those that we would consider to be normal, healthy people living in normal, healthy, productive societies.
Well, consider the New Testament witness regarding the betrayal of Jesus Christ, which I know that you're intimately familiar with, Mark. Here you have blood money, right, taken out of the temple treasury, where the Jewish religious leadership pays off Judas Iscariot to betray Jesus Christ and to be a participant in this frame-up operation, which leads subsequently to his death. You then remember, of course, the account of how Judas Iscariot, was so overcome finally by what he had been drawn into that he attempted to return the money, as if that, of course, could change what had already been done. And, of course, he was told by the Jewish religious leadership that, hey, we can't take that money and put it back in the temple treasury because it's blood money. In other words, obviously it begs the question, doesn't it? Well, isn't framing an innocent man and having him put to death murder? In other words, gee, these guys are concerned about the technicality of putting this blood money back in the temple treasury. The fact of the matter is they drew up this criminal conspiracy. They financed it. They were the driving force behind the framing and the ultimate execution of the Son of God, and that didn't trouble them in the least. But then when it came down to this technicality about putting blood money for this assassin back into the treasury, they didn't want to do that. I mean, what kind of mentality is behind this?
Absolutely. And this, I think, again, like I said, this is illustrative of the very backward, small-minded type of system here that has glommed onto the most powerful military force in the world, meaning that of the United States. And this is the reason why we find ourselves unable to find any freedom with this thing, is that you've got a people here who really, let's face it, you and I and others are living in the 21st century AD. And they are living in the 21st century BC, and they are trying to drag the world back to that level of underdevelopment. There's just no other way to call it than that. This level of underdevelopment or state of arrested development. And this is the problem why you hear the gears of the world grinding, and the engine of civilization whining as it is being exerted beyond its capacity. And this is just something to consider. Now, Mark, you provided us a perfect segue to launch into today's discussion with your discussion of Judas Iscariot. Remember, of course, that Judas was one of the 12 apostles, and from what I understand, he was really the only one who technically was a Jew. The others, of course, were Galileans. They were not Judeans. And, of course, in the end, it was Judas who handed Jesus over to his enemies in Judea to be crucified. Now, many people don't know this, but Judas is considered a hero within the Jewish community. There have been entire books that have been written. In fact, there was one that was just written a few years ago talking about Judas and how what he did was a good thing. Excuse me, because by handing Jesus over, by betraying Jesus Christ, Jesus was able to be killed, and therefore all of our sins being redeemed. So this idea of betrayal is something that is enshrined within this particular community, celebrated. In fact, there was a book that was written in the Middle Ages. I can't recall the name of it right now. I should have looked it up before the program, where Judas is the hero of this story for having betrayed Jesus. Now, the reason that I use this as the segue for the discussion that we're about to have is because, as all of you out there know, we are in the business of trying to bring peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis, or between the Arabs and the Jews, whichever one you want to use. This week, once again, the idea was put forward that if the United States wants peace between Israel and the Palestinians, then America is going to have to let Jonathon Pollard go. Now, this is very important on several levels, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you out there who do not know who Jonathon Pollard is, he is the most notorious and dangerous traitor to the United States in our history. Okay? The only people who come close to the treachery of Jonathon Pollard, the only possible people coming that close, are the Rosenbergs, who helped in handing over America's nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union. However, the experts who know better have said that there is nothing comparable to the treason of Jonathon J. Pollard that took place in the mid-1980s. Now, Jonathon Pollard was a naval analyst, an analyst working for naval intelligence. He was a Jew, and during a period of about 18 months, he stole and then sold to Israel close to 1 million documents that were classified secret compartmented intelligence, which is the highest classification that exists in the U.S. intelligence community. As a result of his treason, we lost somewhere around 1,500 assets or agents working behind the Iron Curtain in certain parts of Europe. Our targeting system and our early warning system for our satellites that let us know of an impending nuclear attack by the Soviet Union was completely compromised. All of the information detailing what America would do to defend itself in the case of an attack by the Soviet Union was compromised. When Pollard was caught, and he was being interrogated by the intelligence officer named Ron Olive, Pollard said, and I quote here, excuse me just a second, I'm reading from Ron Olive's book, which, by the way, I highly recommend. It is entitled Capturing Jonathon Pollard. It is published by the Naval Institute Press. As I said, his name is Ron Olive. And Olive writes, quoting Pollard, he says as followed. Pollard then broke the silence with an off-the-wall comment. Quote, Ron, you know the U.S. government shouldn't give high clearances to Jewish people because when asked to help, we're willing to do anything for the love of our country. And of course, our, in this case, does not mean the United States, ladies and gentlemen. It means Israel. Now, Pollard has been serving a life sentence, which really, for all intents and purposes, he got off easy. He should have been executed for what he did. And that was the opinion of the Secretary of Defense at that time, Caspar Weinberger, that Pollard should have been executed for it because of the seriousness of this. Not just stealing these secrets and selling them to Israel, but Israel giving these secrets to the Soviet Union, who was our enemy at the time, our sworn, avowed enemy. Remember that thing known as the Cold War, ladies and gentlemen, where people were building bomb shelters in their yards because of the not just the possibility but the likelihood of a war with the Soviet Union? And our ally, Israel, sold the most sensitive isn't even the word to use, ladies and gentlemen. This is like giving away to a bunch of thieves your credit cards, all of your financial information, your Social Security numbers, the keys to your house, the keys to your car, anything that can be used against you, giving it to your enemies. Now, the Netanyahu government is once again pushing for Pollard's release. And they're using the situation of the peace talks and the possibility of slowing down the building of the settlements in the West Bank as the bait to do this. Now, the reason that I am bringing this up, the fact that Israel did this horrible thing has never been brought to account for it. I mean, after all, if we were to sit down and do the math and figure out how many billions of dollars have been given to Israel since 1985 when this took place, obviously she never paid a dime, in terms of money or in terms of restitution for what she did to us. She wouldn't even return the documents that were stolen. She wouldn't even return the documents, ladies and gentlemen. And now these SOBs are once again demanding the United States to release this guy, despite the fact that our intelligence and our law enforcement community know that Pollard still has information in that fat head of his that could be used against us in the sense of our national security interests. The reason, I guess, that I am so excised about this, Mark, or exercised about this, is because it shows that these people have no sense of remorse. They have no sense of respect for us, that they would even glance in our direction and kind of say, hey, do you think maybe, possibly, we could do something about Pollard? I mean, it just goes to show you that this entire fantasy that has been constructed around the idea that Israel and America are friends is exactly that. It's not just a fantasy. It's a nightmare. Mark, I know you've been reading up on this situation involving Pollard. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, on my Facebook page, I put a few thoughts together because I thought it might conceivably come up on Press TV last night. And I guess the things that I said on Facebook are the very things I would say in the show today. We should simply say, in the first place, no deal. The fact that we did not execute this guy and should have, again, reiterating what you've already said, Mark, and that is that Cap Weinberger said at the time that what this guy did to the national security interests of the people of the United States should have resulted in his death, and I agree with that. So I think it's a major concession on the part of the United States that this guy was not hung as he should have been. But then you get into this whole business of Netanyahu saying that he's ready to extend this partial freeze partial freeze on these settlements for 3 months in return for Pollard's release.